R-Type Final 2 is a horizontal scrolling shooter video game developed and published by Granzella. Part of Irene's long-running R-Type series, it's a sequel to R-Type Final released in 2004 and the first R-Type game in over a decade, after the release of R-Type Tactics 2, Operation Bitter Chocolate in 2009. The game was released for Microsoft Windows, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X and S on April 29, 2021. R-Type is a science fiction horizontal scrolling shooter video game franchise developed and published by Irene for arcade systems and home game platforms. The first entry in the series was released way back in 1987, R-Type, followed by several sequels for other platforms. 10 games in total have been released in the series, and gameplay centers on an intergalactic war between humans and the Bido, a powerful extraterrestrial race that are made from both biological life forms and mechanical structures. Now, most of the earlier R-Type games have the player controlling the R9 Arrowhead star vessel, although other entries have slightly altered versions of the ship instead. But with R-Type Final 2, there are over 100 different ships to unlock, buy, and choose from, and these series of videos will highlight the best of them. This video will focus on one of the more desired and powerful ships to be found in R-Type Final 2, the Kaguya, or OF-5, which is number 53 in the museum. The Kaguya is the last model in the OF series. It can carry the top bit device, the green pod, but few were made due to the high production cost. It may be named after Princess Kaguya of the Tale of the Bamboo Cutter, since some say that the green pod's shots resemble bamboo. However, this is little more than just speculation. OF-type craft are called orbital strike units and are characterized by their speed change transformations. They could even inflict damage on the enemy with their backfire that is launched from the rear when rapidly switching modes. The most well-known feature of these OF crafts is the powerful bit which they can install, called a pod. Although their lasers and bits are very powerful, the wave cannon is only a standard spec. Overall, the Kaguya comes with a standard wave cannon, 2 loop max, an OF-5 force type, 4 different types of bits, green pod, red pod, blue pod, and yellow pod, and 2 types of missiles, a homing missile and a depth bomb. This video will detail each and show you how powerful and useful the Kaguya can be when it comes to getting through the many difficult stages found in R-Type Final 2. Now let's get into the details here of what this great ship has to offer. So first, let's discuss wave cannons and what they even are. The wave cannon is a core feature of R-Type. Though not quite as uniquely identifying as the Force, it's still one of the defining features of flying an aircraft. The wave cannon is an energy-based weapon that has been modified into many forms, often appropriate to the design and function of the ship that carries it. It's a standard feature, in some form or another, on every aircraft in the Space Corps, and thus there are many different kinds of wave cannons. When charging a wave cannon, the pilot must forego firing the main weapons, both Vulcan cannon and any applicable force weapons, though missiles will continue to fire, and fly defensively until the charge has reached the desired limit. The pilot is committed to firing the wave cannon once the charge sequence has started. There's no way to cancel it short of ship destruction or firing the weapon. Since most missions present a target-rich environment, however, this is rarely a concern. Part of mastering an aircraft is knowing how its wave cannon works and when best to use it. Note that a wave cannon can be fired at any point during the charge sequence. Even at a 50% charge, a wave cannon shot can pack a good punch and often pierce weak targets. Typically, each aircraft will possess a single wave cannon, but exceptions do exist. In R-Type Final, every wave cannon has a number of loops. A loop is when the beam bar is filled all the way. If more loops are available, continuing to charge the wave cannon will fill the beam bar again, increasing the energy of the wave cannon shot. The pilot will know when the maximum loop has been achieved when the wave meter flashes. Although it takes a long time, with certain wave cannons it is possible to charge a beam so powerful that can even kill bosses in a single blast. The most common number of loops is 2, but the number varies between 1 and 4, with a single wave cannon having 7 loops. The loops are labeled Beam, High, Strong, Great, Special, Devil, and Bido. Most wave cannons are unique to, at best, a small group of ships in the R series. However, the fully customizable R-99 Last Dancer, R-100 Curtain Call, and R-101 Grand Finale can equip any wave cannon. In R-Type Final 2, the Kaguya uses a standard wave cannon, which is a 2-loop max type of wave cannon. The weapon gathers power in the forward prow of the fighter, and the accumulated energy is instantaneously released along with a predetermined targeting vector. The complex physics behind this weapon remove the need for a traditional barrel. The Force unit is a defining feature of R-Type. It's a pilot-controlled satellite unit created by Bido Tissue. The Force unit typically consists of a glowing orange sphere with a number of control rods attached. The Force, like its cousin the Bit device, is virtually indestructible and damages whatever it contacts. Pilots should be warned that whenever an attached Force doesn't eat, it will pass right through it. It contains a catalyst function that converts injected energy into different waveforms. The Force is R-Type's most famous and unique innovation. Described as an indestructible living weapon, it is a glowing, often spherical pod that can be attached to almost any Space Corps ship. It's fashioned out of Bido cells that are captured in the embryonic stages, which are then grown as per specifications as to what type of Force it will be. In the R-Type series alone, there are over 50 different varieties of Forces. Force units allow the pilot to focus different waveforms through it in order to create offensive beams. The type of beam depends on the color of the laser crystal. When launched independent of the spacecraft, each Force operates on its own artificial intelligence, if it possesses one. Though no longer actively controlled, a skilled pilot can learn how a Force that is attached acts and use that to an advantage. Forces are gained by first obtaining a laser crystal power-up. This summons an embryonic Force device. Further collection of crystals cause the Force to grow, up to a maximum of 3. With each level of growth, the Force's attached and detached attacks increase in overall power. A Force device can be attached to either the front or back of a spaceship, allowing a pilot to provide a rear attack that otherwise wouldn't exist. The pilot normally has a single button to control the Force, for both release and recall. By pressing the button when the Force is attached to the ship, it is rocket ejected away in whatever direction it's facing. When detached, the Force can be made to fire, but it uses an array of simple blasters rather than the weapons it supplies to the ship, though a few Forces are exceptions to this rule, like the Chimera Force series. This is because the ship's blaster's energy itself is being channeled into the Force and amplified by the crystal inside. By pressing the button again, the Force can be recalled back to the ship. Because it homes in on the player's ship, the player can control it in a limited manner by moving the ship as it's returning. It is standard behavior for a Force to try to stay on the same lateral plane as the pilot if the pilot keeps distant. If the pilot gets too close, the Force will approach and attach itself automatically. Should the pilot switch sides, the Force will as well, unless the pilot closes for docking, in which case the Force will generally approach the pilot's ship once it's close enough in order to speed the process along. The Force also, importantly, acts as a shield. It's indestructible and can block normal energy weapons, such as Bido shots. It can also damage or destroy enemies by collision. Even though Force units are massive objects that are normally attached to the front of an aircraft, predictive visual software within the crafts remove it from sight when it would otherwise block a pilot's viewpoint. In R-Type Final 2, the Kaguya uses an OF-5 Force type. The red Force is the speed cannon, the blue Force is the 7-way Vulcan, and the yellow Force is the barrier. A bit device is a satellite weapon that's placed above and below a spacecraft. There are several varieties of bits, with the bulk not appearing until R-Type Final. In most configurations, a bit device is a sphere that complacently rotates. It's composed of similar energy as that of the Force, though wholly man-made, and shares the nigh invincibility of that unit. A bit device cannot be destroyed by normal means, and damages whatever it touches. The bit conductor mounted on an aircraft allows control of these devices. Like other aspects in the series, the bit devices have been called other things, such as pit and plasmo. Unlike a Force, bit devices cannot be detached from their places unless it's part of an attack. only 2 bits can be mounted at once, collected one at a time, though exceptions do exist, and are both always of the same type. A bit's primary function is that of defense, to protect the craft against vital shots and contact by minor enemies. The standard bit seen in most missions can also fire shots if a particular laser crystal is equipped, and sometimes both bits are required. It deals less damage than a force, but still has enough stopping power to give a pilot time to get away from more serious threats. There are 12 different types of bit devices throughout the R-Type series: Blue Pod, Kaguya bit, Eyeball bit, Green Pod, Mr. Healy bit, Psi bit Plus, Red Pod Round bit, Shadow bit, Shield bit, and the Yellow Pod. In R-Type Final 2, the Kaguya uses 4 different types of pods: Red Pod, Blue Pod, Green Pod, and Yellow Pod. With the Red Pod, the pilot's will is transmitted directly to the bit, and missile direction can be controlled. The Blue Pod is a test model that was made during development of the Red Pod. Normal and pod shots are possible, but the direction cannot be controlled. The Green Pod is a weapon created by raising the effectiveness of a Red Pod. Its superior firepower is equaled only by the Psi bit Plus device. And the Yellow Pod is a test model developed to measure the destructive power of pod shots. It cannot shoot normal shots. Missiles are common ballistic weapons in the R-Type missions, adding auto-firing missiles to the ship's offense. This entry also refers to ordnance that acts more like bombs. These weapons are fire and forget in that they cannot be controlled by the pilot once launched. They are primarily for offense, though some of them, particularly the homing variety, can also act as a point defense against incoming enemies and projectiles. Once missiles are acquired, they have infinite ammo. Most aircraft have a small number of missile options that they can be deployed with, typically between 2 and 3, but variants do exist. Once deployed, the missile type cannot be changed, so careful thought regarding which missile best complements the ship's force, wave cannon, and bit devices must be considered. In R-Type Final 2, the Kaguya comes with 2 missile types: homing missile and depth bomb. A homing missile is a missile that homes in on targets. 2 can be fired at once. The high rate of fire and accuracy make it a popular choice among pilots, which is why it's deployed by a variety of fighters in a wide range of situations. The depth bomb is a bomb that is dropped straight down. The ease of targeting enables multiple release bomb attacks against ground targets. With depth bombs, the release rate increases with a power-up. Coming up next in our R-Type ship series will be the Bad Apple. So stay tuned for our next video, which highlights the many aspects of this great ship. Thank you for viewing. If you enjoyed this video and found it useful, please like and subscribe to this channel. Again, thank you.